Guys, welcome back to the third and final Coliseum Forum of the day of the Coliseum Forum triple feature. I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Rick Remender. You may know him from Tokyo Ghost, or if you don't know him from Tokyo Ghost, maybe that really cool sci-fi show that got canceled before its time, Deadly Class, which is also a really, really great comic that you could read. Seven to Eternity, Low. I can keep going if you want, but I think everybody gets the point. Mr. Rick Remender, how are you today, sir?
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. I got a shower. That's not always the thing that happens these days.
Fair.
I'll tell you the truth. Sometimes I'll go 3 days and I don't do that. But for you guys, I figured I'm gonna look clean. I'm gonna clean it up. Clean machine.
So
The
wait,
whole thing. Didn't just shower the bottom either. I got my hair washed.
the whole shebang. We got the
Whole
whole
bottom.
thing.
A lot of the time, I don't like to touch anything below the waist because it feels like I'm upsetting Jesus. And so, but this time I cleaned it. But I thought of like baseball and kept it real clean. The whole thing was it's a clean machine, clean activity.
Are you a baseball guy? Because I mean, we could talk about the Astros for a little bit if we're talking about clean things.
I'm not. I hate baseball so much that I think about it to make sure that I don't become erect when I'm washing myself.
Okay, gotcha. Good. Okay, it's this kind of interview. Gotcha. So, guys, today we're here to talk about Rick's upcoming book. Something I'm very excited to tell you guys about today. The Scumbag. Um, Rick, I mean, do you want to give us the elevator pitch on the new book, or do you want me to do it?
Well, I mean, the clean and simple is if you imagine a filthy reprobate uh, who is given a super soldier serum and forces some poor Illuminati style clandestine spy organization to barter and bribe him to perform tasks to save the world, then you've got the scumbag. This is it's basically if you gave an apolitical garbage person the power to change the course of things and to save us all, but of course, in order to do so, he has to make decisions and care about other people, which is not something that Ernie Ray Clementine has done much of to date.
So I do have to ask, and I mean, I know being a writer is like being able to step out of your own experiences and perspectives, but like I gotta be honest, as I was reading Scumbag, the first issue, like you really kind of nailed down that character and that culture to like kind of like a T, like scarily so.
Uh, well, that's hopefully what writers do with any of the things that they're writing about. The character Ernie, I grew up in the '70s and '80s, and I was a little punk rock skate grommet, and so the metal scene was never really for me. But I remember characters like Ernie. Every neighborhood had a guy like Ernie who was working on a primer gray Camaro on blocks and playing Iron Maiden, and it's also sort of akin to the Matthew McConaughey character from Dazed and Confused. Sort of that guy. If he, what happens to that guy when he's all grown up? And so it occurred to me around 4 years ago. Something happened, and a terrible person was given a lot of power. I can't remember offhand exactly what. But
Sure.
as that was happening, I was writing some notes about. I think I wrote the log line, like the fate of the world rests in the hands of the worst person on it,
Right.
and I had been playing with ideas about doing a spy book, and anyway, it's funny these things all just kind of come together, and then I had wanted to write about this extinct stoner, this extinct Judas Priest style metalhead who had gone extinct. They existed in the '70s and '80s, and in the early '90s, you still might find them selling weed to high school kids. But then by the mid '90s, they were completely gone, eradicated from the wild. And so it's like interesting to look for archetypes and character types like that you know, ideally aren't represented, and you can do something in comics or film and television that hasn't been done before.
No, absolutely, and it is really weird that you point that out. By like the mid '90s, those people just didn't exist anymore. Because I remember being a little kid, and when I say little kid, elementary school age, and we had an Ernie that lived in our neighborhood. And I, to this day, I'm 36 years old now, but you know, you'd be waiting on the school bus, and our Ernie would ask, and I still don't understand what this means, but he would go, "You kids fixing to smoke a tater?" And I don't know what I mean, I think taters are potatoes potentially, but I was never fixing to smoke a potato, and I just don't really, you know. But that was he was.
I think that you had somebody who didn't know what they were talking about. I've heard a lot of terminology in regards to drug use. I've heard taters applied to female breasts by dirtbags. I have never heard of a marijuana cigarette referred to as a tater. I think he was testing you to see if you were cool or you were with the cops.
Oh,
as a young cop, he might have been worried that he couldn't, you know, you weren't down, and you might drop a dime on him.
Oh, I was very not down in the third grade, so
he might have just been making sure you were cool, you know, like. And fair. If you had said like, "Yeah, let's smoke a tater," he would have gone like, "No thanks, little third grade kid, trying to like entrap me."
Right. Yeah. No, but that was definitely our Ernie, and I think, you know, especially in that era that you described, every neighborhood had that guy, right, or that person. So.
It's also kind of the Otto character in The Simpsons.
Yeah, exactly. So you, as you pointed out, they kind of all evaporated up in the 90s. What do you think happened?
I think it's a CIA conspiracy. I think that the government rounded them up. I think they were too dangerous. They had a party-like influence on people.
Sure.
And if they had stayed relevant or you know, a part of society, then we'd all still be doing cocaine and listening to Motorhead, and that wouldn't be. I think that it's sort of not. A society can't operate with that kind of an influence. So they were hunted down and killed off, I believe.
Just hunted to extinction.
Hunted to extinction's right.
That's very unfortunate.
It is. It's really that's what. And a lot. I'm just trying to build awareness with the book about them, that they existed.
Right.
That they've been forgotten.
Sure.
That they were people, and they had feelings and lives and dreams, just like the rest of us.
So just really honestly, some historical context, and then like, you know, maybe let history shine a brighter light on that era, and what these people, how important they were to, you know, culture and civilization as a whole.
They couldn't have been more. I mean, how they couldn't have been more important. They couldn't have been more important.
Right.
You wouldn't have most of the things you have today without them.
Van Halen, there'd be no Van Halen.
They definitely were part of. They definitely were. You know, but just the David Lee Roth. I mean, if you were to play a Sammy Hagar Van Halen tune to them,
that's different.
They would become so violent you might not survive the encounter. And you know, they by the late '80s, their music of choice, things like the Scorpions and Motley Crue, had become sort of corporatized, had become corporatized and cleaned up and put on the MTVs, and so they were very upset about that. And I think that they probably were. There's a number of stories about them trying to blow up the MTV offices. And maybe that's why they were rounded up. They became weaponized, the metalheads.
So I would say also we probably wouldn't have Coors Banquet anymore if it wasn't for these guys. Bandanas would probably be a thing of the past.
There wouldn't be aviator glasses, Camaros, Trans Ams.
Yep, there it is.
No, we'd have all of those things. I would be afraid to see what society we owe them so much.
No, I agree.
I'm afraid to see where we'd be today without them.
They're a pillar that's just forgotten about. Like, you know, you hear about the fourth pillar. These guys are the fifth pillar, and they're just totally forgotten from history. And I really think something like the Scumbag is really going to maybe bring that culture hopefully back around.
I mean, you know, look, all he wants is to party and have a good time and get laid. And we've forgotten those three things. We have fallen into disarray and partisanship, and everything is toxified, and we're either dealing with people who are hypersensitive or hyper insensitive. Ernie's right there in the middle. He's just trying to say, like, do a bump, throw on your favorite Iron Maiden album, and get laid. And you know what? Now more than ever, we need Ernie and his message, I think.
I 100% agreed. So, shifting gears a little bit, when we came in, I dropped, 5 of the 4 million books you're known for. This is something I'd asked the previous creators, and I definitely want to ask you as well. Do you have a favorite child that's out there in the wild? Of all the books that you've worked on, like, is there one you point to and you're like, yeah, that's the best thing I've ever done?
They all have, if you're doing it right, they all have different parts of you,
Sure.
and in terms of the creator-owned stuff, at least, and even some of the Marvel stuff, not quite to the same degree, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because I try to make sure there's no reason to do a book that's too similar to another one. So I try to
Sure.
make sure that they're all in different worlds and saying different things and focusing on different kinds of characters. So I don't really necessarily have a favorite. I know that there's ones that I I think top to bottom on the it would start with like Fear Agent and Strange Girl earlier in my career,
Sure.
and all of the things I've been doing this decade at Image. I've been really grinding myself up to write to write stories that are hopefully exciting and say something and have an emotional depth to them. And in terms of the Scumbag, there's still a bit of an emotional depth to that, but it was also sort of the first time I had let myself write comedy. I was sort of credited with giving a second life to Deadpool 10, 12 years ago when I was working on X-Force. And that version of Deadpool was really just me writing a comedy comic I had done 10 years before that about a skate punk called Blackheart Billy. And
What a good name.
I really enjoy writing that stuff, the sort of absurdist humor. And this year has been so incredibly fucking awful, top to bottom. And I suffered a lot of personal losses, and I'm sitting here in a rental house hiding from society to keep my immunocompromised family members safe from COVID. And I really desperately needed to write something that was fun and funny and absurd. And I really expected the Scumbag would be sort of like Deadly Class, that it would be for me. Every once in a while you do these projects that you're not thinking in any way about any other exploitation, or that there may be another audience for it. You just sometimes want to just create something and make it for the joy because it makes you happy. And it's interesting how like Deadly Class was the last one of those I did that was just entirely for me. And people really loved it. And I got to go and make a TV show and work with the Russo brothers on it. And now the Scumbag is another one of those that I expect is going to, nobody's going to read it. Nobody's going to care. It's going to sell low numbers, and I'm just going to, enjoy making it. And, sold 70,000 copies out of the gate. And so maybe everybody is ready to have, some absurdity and some comedy to try to cleanse the taste of this world we're living in right now.
Oh, I know for me at least. Well, first of all, just for like, I think I mentioned this to you 3 times already. I'm a huge fan, and I've read a ton of your work. Tonally, Scumbag is different than anything. I mean, it's nothing like Black Science. I mean, maybe a little common with Deadly Class, but low, or even Tokyo Ghost. Like, this is something. It was almost shocking in tone how different it was. But like you said, I mean, you're pretty really good at writing comedy. And I think maybe the at least my takeaway from here is like, you just need to like write the stuff that for you, because those are the things that seem to resonate really, really well. And I think it, at least for in Ernie Clementine's sake, it's nice to see somebody that's got it a little worse off than the rest of us right now. Right? Like,
But yeah, it's funny because I tried at the beginning of it to not have anything to say. Normally,
Right.
I work so hard, like, what am I thinking? What do I want to say through this character? And as I was writing it, he became sort of representational of the apolitical non-voter and the kind of person who's apathetically just watching things fall apart
Sure.
and not getting involved or taking a side, or somebody who's watching something that they perceive to be an atrocity happening to their country, but keeping their mouth shut because it's safer for their financial situation. And they don't want to ruffle any feathers.
Right.
You know, it sort of became, he became representational of cowardice, in my opinion.
Okay.
And that really, suddenly I'm not just writing the absurdity and I'm now, by the time I've finished the 6th issue, I'm like, well, now I've said things.
Right.
So it is interesting. And I do always say to creators and writers when I meet them at shows, back when we had these things, we used to all meet as human beings in places.
Right.
And there wasn't a fear of like a plague killing 3% of the people in the room.
Right.
And they were called comic conventions. And at these comic conventions, up and coming writers will always, try to pick your brain about what they should do. And I come to the same conclusion. I think that like the things I've been doing at Image for the past 8-9 years, all of them are kind of wild and ideas at the beginning that don't necessarily feel like they're going to be able to be more than. It doesn't seem like they're necessarily like hitting the trends of the time, or they're not ideas that are like doing Fear Agent in 2004, there was literally not another science fiction comic book at the time.
Right.
Especially one that was emulating, EC Comics and trying to lean into the Wally Wood and the fun, sort of swashbuckling of it all. But I think that when you do that, when you find that if it's for you and there aren't any other examples of it in the marketplace, and you do it with heart and with truth, and you say something, those are books that seem to be evergreen for me, and they seem to find audiences and stay alive. Like Fear Agent, who I never would have guessed that 16 years after starting Fear Agent, I'd be working with Seth Rogen making a TV show at Amazon, and that I would still be making fans and people coming up to me who had just found it. Somebody tweeted at me the other day with it, the ending of Fear Agent made me cry. And it's wild to write something and that all those years later, somebody else can pick it up and take that journey. And I think that those evergreen stories, I think they tend to come out of the strange places, as opposed to the you can tell when somebody's trying to make a creator-owned comic that's a film pitch, like when the vampires took over the werewolves and the two of them formed werepires. By the way, werepires is mine. Nobody can have that.
I was going to say, like, is the next book after Scumbag? The Scumbag is we're looking at werepires from Rick Remender.
You're witnessing the creative magic happen.
No, that's awesome. I mean, keep it coming. Like, let's spitball some more ideas. Like after Werevampires, what do we got?
I don't know. I can't. I'm still neck deep in werepires, so I can't quite like. I want to live there for a while and figure out like, I don't know what I want to figure out.
I'm just saying, like, if at some point there's a Werepires comic book that spins out, I'm gonna lose my mind. So, I think I think you hit on something there that would probably resonate. So, let it marinate for a little bit.
I'll just in on it.
Yeah. Somebody just texted me that is watching the stream right now and goes, and they're not a comics person. They go, man, I'd party with Rick Remender. So.
I don't know. It gets wild quick.
Yeah, I could see that. So we pick up with Ernie. He gets a super soldier serum, and he's going to be responsible.
Formula Maxima.
That is true.
A super soldier serum would make it copyright Disney. So
is that really can you copyright a super soldier serum? I mean,
I'm pretty sure the super soldier serum is copywritten as a thing that was given to Captain America. So, but this is the Formula Maxima.
Right.
It's a very similar type of thing. It's got different powers and attributes.
Sure.
But it's for shorthand. I just want to make sure nobody gets litigious.
Right. Fair. No, we can. Hopefully, no lawyers are watching. We can kind of, a little be fast and loose with it.
They're always watching. They're always watching.
But in this, it's the Formula Maxima. I do want to ask this because I've been privileged enough to read the first issue. It is super, super awesome. Like I said, it doesn't read or even look like anything else you've done at this point. Are we gonna find out about some more of the like background ancillary characters in the book?
Yeah, the spy organization that he works in becomes a huge focus of
right.
the story, and the spies within that organization. You have Mother Earth, who runs Central Authority, and then you have Sister Mary, who was intended to receive the formula, and she's supposed to have these powers that Ernie now has taken. You have Father Time, another 007 style, sure. Nick Fury style, a super spy who well, I don't want to give anything away. But anyway, then you've got Brother Wolf, who is a young sort of Jimmy Olsen-esque, but a mechanical genius,
sure,
who is sort of Q of Central Authority. And so as we build and unpack, we'll meet them and spend more and more time with them.
The reason I phrased my question that way is because I specifically wanted to know, like, hey, are we going to find out more about Father Time? But I didn't know if even saying names was like too spoilery. So, but yeah, no,
I think it's fine. I mean, like, I think Father Time's story. Anyway, I think that all of the other spies and the spy world and the villains all play a big role. And a lot of the villains, I wanted to sort of sink into. One of the things I wrote at Marvel, and the thing that I think is probably one of the best things I've written, if not the best thing I wrote at Marvel, was called called The Bitter March, and it was a Winter Soldier miniseries. And it sent me back in the day. I worked at Electronic Arts on the From Russia with Love video game. And I sort of rekindled my love of the old Sean Connery 007 movies.
Right.
And I love the villains, sort of over the top Spectre villains, and all of the Jaws and the Odd Job and the crazy sort of pulpy bad guys.
Right.
And I wanted to take that and update it for now. And so in one hand, we have Scorpionus, which is an ultra right-wing white nationalist organization, and those are the villains that we're going to be up against in the first arc, and some of the things that they're up against. And so a lot of it was taking all of the sort of classic tropes and spy tropes and mixing it in with the here and now, and in the center of it putting somebody who is an apolitical, self-serving garbage person who has never helped anybody, but if it's all going to get resolved, it's on his shoulders.
Right. So, and I do have to ask, the Scumbag as of now is going to be an ongoing series, correct?
Yeah.
And how far into the development of the overall series are you?
I've got 6 issues done and drawn. I've outlined up to around issue 12 or 13. And I'm doing something different on this, where instead of writing single issues, I'm writing arcs.
Okay.
And I'm writing entire 5-6 issue stories all at once, which I did on the first arc, and I loved it, to be that immersed in the one thing. And then I also am working on a top secret other aspect of the project that I was working on at the same time. So all of the development, I've been really immersed in it. So I'm doing that again for the second arc. And then handing out 22-page chapters
right.
to some of my favorite artists. And
so the art's going to change as the book goes along.
Say again?
The art's going to change as the book goes along.
Every issue's got a new artist. Yeah,
that's awesome.
So this is an opportunity to make it feel like one of those old Marvel annuals, where every chapter sometimes chapter 1 and then chapter 2. Each chapter changes art styles and artists, and it also gives me an opportunity to work with, dozens of really great artists who I've always wanted to get a chance to work with.
So let me ask you this, because I mean that's an interesting approach, and it's not something you see very often. Do you send like a welcome aboard packet with the script, and it's like it includes like, sketches of Ernie and like this is what a heroin syringe looks like and this is what a line of cocaine looks like, or do you kind of leave it up to them? Like, how does that work?
I definitely send a lot of video reference on what a line of cocaine looks like. Um, I come from animation. That was
Right.
where my career started.
Sure.
And so I'm pretty used to running productions, and that enabled me to show run the Deadly Class show. And so my experience in production enables me, I think, to do this uniquely, in that every single issue being drawn by somebody else means that everyone needs to be in constant communication, and you need to be looking for what they call link ups,
Okay.
where if something happens in issue 4 and that artist is designing it, but it pops up in issue 2, everyone needs to be talking and cross-pollinating designs
Sure.
and sending model sheets. And so, yeah, when new artists come in, they get all of the issues, they get model sheets, they get all of the various other emails. And I send out a lot of group emails to keep all the teams talking, so that if they have questions like, you know, I'm working on issue 9, but this thing shows up in issue 6, and go, yeah, it's, you know, Wes Craig designed that in issue 5. So it's a little bit of, you know, and my editor, Will Dennis, is a big help in keeping that sort of thing, keeping all those plates spinning as well.
But I mean, for me at least, I mean, that sounds a lot less like creating comics than like managing a production, right? Like, I mean, it almost seems like doing comics on hard mode, trying to keep all those balls in the air. I mean, do you find that more difficult than just sitting down and like writing a book with a single artist and you guys do a collaboration?
No, because I end up doing this kind of thing on all the books. I mean, part of the job on my end is administrative things, and I like this. It's like, I like production. I liked, you know, I when I was running my animation studio, I like show running. I like doing production stuff. I like being involved in that end of things. It's
Sure.
a different part of the brain, and so this activates that. And it's also a lot of fun to take the model sheets done by one artist and send them to another, and then see their take on it,
Right.
and see all these covers coming in. And it's unique in that all of these things for the first arc, the first 5 issues, were all being built around at the same time. And so art was being sent around and back and forth from all these other artists. But instead of having one artist do an issue and an issue and an issue and sort of chronologically moving forward,
Sure.
I had 5 issues that I'd written all at once being drawn all at once.
Right.
And so I could see things in issue 5 being drawn that were seated in issue 1 and 2. And it was a unique, it was a different way of doing it, but I love it. I find that it's very fulfilling, and it's so interesting to see how you get like a Wes Craig handling some character designs done by Eric Powell, or how Andrew Robinson took Louis LaRosa's thing and did something with it, or how, you know, Roland Boschi is taking some designs and that Wes did and adding in characters that Bengal is working on. And so, you know, you're shifting up all these genius artists, and every chapter is so unique. But I've got Moreno Dionisio from Black Science coloring all of it, and so he's keeping it all sort of uniformed,
Sure.
at least in that aspect.
Now, is he going to change up the colors based on the artist, or is it going to be very uniform across the book?
No, Moreno is like a crazy genius, and so it's uniformed enough that the book has a cohesion because
Sure.
of what he's doing, but also he's adapting his style to each artist. You know, each one of these guys in the first 3 issues, we've got Louis LaRosa, Andrew Robinson, Eric Powell, and they're all
Those are some names.
A-list great
Yeah.
artists doing variously. You know, they're quite different though, and so you can see the style that he's using to color it, and at least the approach and the rendering change, but
Sure.
the overall palettes and these things are staying pretty consistent.
So let me ask you this, because it sounds like your workflow in this book is a little bit different than what you usually do with like the cross pollination between the artists and kind of managing that production. But you mentioned earlier that you're writing out arcs instead of issues. I imagine that has its own set of challenges, right? Like, okay, you know, usually if you're writing a story, you know, like, okay, I've got to get 22 pages done, and then we'll pick up in the next issue. Are you even, you know, thinking about those sort of things when you're working on in story arcs versus issues, or you just write and wherever 22 issues cuts or wherever, you know, the book's going to be, you're like, well, that's the end of that issue, or do you actually have to frame it so that it makes sense narratively?
Yeah, I've never worked that way. I always write an outline for everything before I start on it. I
Oh,
don't
wow.
I
Okay.
don't do the seat of my pants, sort of make it up as I go.
Sure.
I believe that there is a purity of intention, and having been trained in animation and film and television, you get your story figured out, and then you polish and polish and polish, and then you start doing scripts.
Right.
And there are some people that I've argued with that prefer to just do a script at a time and just. I consider that shitting it out.
Right.
People don't have to agree with me, but that is shitting it out.
Right.
I can read those books and go like, yeah, there's no purity of intention here. This is just somebody making shit up as they go.
Right.
I don't like to read those kinds of stories.
Sure.
So I've always tried to make sure that what I'm doing is foundationally satisfying, and you can see things that are seeded, pay out later, that there are character arcs, that
Right.
there's a clear sort of structure happening, and somebody put some time and thought into it.
Sure.
Because I guess at the end of the day, a comic is $4, and not only is somebody going to have to spend a month to 2 months drawing that story, but a human being is going to have to drive to a comic book store or order it online or get it on their iPad and pay $4 and sit down and open it. And I am so appreciative of having anybody read anything I create. I always want to make sure that what I'm doing is the absolute very best I'm capable of, and that what they're getting isn't just a jerk off, if you don't mind my terminology.
No.
Where I sort of threw it out there and said, and then this guy fights this guy, and then the guy's blown up, and then the building's turned into robots. I think that so what the Scumbag is what I never have done, though. I've always outlined every story I've done, every arc I do, I outline it, and then I'll call the artist. So like Mateo, we would get on Skype and we would talk about Black Science.
Right.
Same thing with Wes or Sean Murphy or Greg Tocchini he speaks Portuguese, so we email.
Right.
Ours is a little different, but anyway, with Ben Gall, all these various people that I've been working with, we talk the story out, and I'll outline the arc. I'll spend a couple weeks sort of beating on it, bouncing it off the editor, and vetting it and making it the best I can, and then I'll take 22-page chunks of that and script it.
Right.
And with the Scumbag, I did the outline and then went right into scripting all of it, which was great. I've never been able to stay that immersed in one story for that long. And I did that at the same time as I was writing the pilot for a TV show, and did a number of things like just all Scumbag centric, and staying sort of in that world for that amount of time allowed, I found a pretty deep immersion. And I felt like by the time I got to issue 5, I could still go back to issue 2 and tweak things and then really make them more cohesive.
Sure. No, I think in your work as a whole, anytime you read a Rick Remender book, that definitely shows through. Now getting a peek behind the curtain, like getting to see Oz, like you definitely see like this is what you've been doing in your books, and I'm actually very excited to see with the kind of the changes you're doing with Scumbag. That's going to be awesome. I want to shift topics a little bit, and we are here to talk about the Scumbag, but can I ask a little bit about Deadly Class, because that was awesome.
Anything you want to talk about? Yeah.
What happened? Like, that was the best comic book TV show that has ever happened in the history of the world. In fact, me and my brother watched the pilot. They released it early on the sci-fi.com. We stayed up late. We watched it like little kids. We were so giddy to see it. The scene where they're in the car talking about comic books and he pulls the Glock on him is bar none, hands down, the best scene about somebody talking about comic books that has ever been put to screen. So the fact that that is not on the air anymore is criminal.
Look, it's a double-edged sword. The book drew a lot of wonderfully talented people to it.
Yeah.
I got to work with Joe and Anthony Russo to develop this thing and then take it, and then I got to show run it, where I was rewriting every script and I was running the show and editing it and choosing the music, and I got to make. I love it. It's a season of television that I couldn't be more proud of.
Sure.
What's interesting is that, and I don't think this is bumming anybody out to say it at this point in time. I think a lot of what the hope was is that this would be an expensive show, and it was fairly expensive, that was made with top tier talent and a movie star and Benedict Wong and the Russo brothers. and it would maybe change the perception of the network a little bit after things like Sharknado and maybe a string of things that weren't great. I'm not shitting on Sharknado's great in it's a big cheesy B thing and people love it. That's not what I'm saying. You get what I'm after here. Like, in order to make it a little bit more, sort of like what Mr. Robot did for USA. I think it's sort of the goal. The problem is that Mr. Robot was 3 years before Deadly Class, and by the time Deadly Class airs, the age group demographic that are watching Deadly Class, they're recording it on DVRs or they're watching it on the site. And what was interesting is in the live +8 +10, we were the #1 show every week.
Right.
So Deadly Class was the #1 show on cable, but it was the #1 show on cable with people watching it on DVRs or online.
Right.
You know, like younger people under 50.
Right.
Let's say.
Correct.
And then I was talking to Robert Kirkman, and I didn't quite understand that business. And I was like, dude, I think we're doing great. We're the #1 show. And Robert's like, no, man, they don't care. If it ain't the first 3 days, they don't care. And it turns out, and I'm sorry, that's a terrible Robert. I love Robert.
That's good, though.
It's pretty good. I got a pretty good Robert. Yeah. I can do it okay. You know, I don't think he loved it. But it turns out, and I didn't know any of this because I'd never made a TV show, is that these things live or die on cable based on their live +3, which basically anything after 3 days of the live airing of a TV show, they consider that to be people on DVRs who are fast forwarding commercials. So advertisers don't really want to advertise on shows like that. Right. And so that's where the ratings get you. And so we were at a time when everybody was going streaming. Everybody was getting entire seasons of their shows delivered. And we were on a Wednesday night at 10 o'clock on a network that nothing else on the network was representational of what we were doing.
Sure.
So absolutely. We were up against a few things. And, there was at one point the show was going to maybe be a lead-in or come at the tail end of Mr. Robot on USA. And I think if that had happened, that we would, be filming the 3rd season right now.
Agreed.
I think that everyone involved did an amazing job. It's really wonderful to hear that you loved the show.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't be more proud of it. And I think once it finally finds its way to a streamer, because of politics and business things I won't begin to discuss here, it's not streaming. And I think that there's a time where Deadly Class Season 1 will pop up on a Hulu or a Netflix or a Peacock or one of these streamers, and people will find it, and it'll have hopefully something akin to what Freaks and Geeks did when that DVD set came out 20 years ago, and people could find it.
I only hope that's the case, just because that, like I said, it's one of my favorite comics. Seeing it so well translated, because I mean, there was just things that the way you guys handled some of the stuff in the show that was like, yeah, that was in the comic, I don't think we'll see it in the show, and then it happens in the show, and you guys handle it in an even more like special way. Like, you guys killed it. In fact, one of my all-time favorite like heroes was one of the writers on that show, and I mean, he's the showrunner, I'm sure, Dave Anthony.
I was the showrunner.
No, he was a writer on the show. Yeah, no, Dave Anthony was a writer on the show. No, you were the boss, but I guess he wrote on the show, right?
No, Dave Anthony is a terrible person who I subjugated and made work under me. Yeah, no, Dave had very little power. He didn't have much say. I rewrote all of his scripts.
Okay.
He would keep coming in and saying, "Please, can I do more on the show and have a voice?" And I said, "I don't think so." And I would make sure that Dave felt like, and I would say, "No, I'm the showrunner. Uh-huh. You're a co-producer." And I would wake up every day. We'd come into the office, and I would say that to Dave. I would say, "Hey, good morning, Dave. I'm the showrunner, and you're a co-producer." So, that was Dave's role. Was mostly just so I could have somebody to kick around.
I mean, that seems on brand. Like, if you listen to his podcast, I'm gonna give a shout out to the Dollop. I don't think we want to help Dave. Do we need to go back and cut that part?
I don't think anybody should go listen to anything Dave's done. Okay. I would hate to spend any time when we're talking about me and how important special I am.
Yeah.
like I appreciate that like other people are in the world.
Right.
It's fine. I see people all the time that are other people. And I'm like, oh, that's another person. Okay.
Right.
While we're talking about me, I definitely don't want to like do a shout out to Dave Anthony and the Dollop, where
Right.
he runs his mouth. I mean, it's a podcast. Everyone can do a podcast.
Right.
I can do a podcast. This could be a podcast.
I'm doing a live stream right now. We were talking about that this morning. It's like, why don't we just rip the audio from Coliseum Forum and turn it into a podcast?
And make this the first episode and
Yeah.
call it Fuck Dave Anthony, the episode of
Right.
the Coliseum Forum.
F Dave Anthony. Don't listen to the Dollop. Rick Remender's the best. First episode, Coliseum Forum, in parentheses.
That's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking.
No, but me and my brother, we're big fans of the Dollop. We're big fans of the guy we're not going to mention anymore. So the fact that he worked on this show of a comic that we're already huge fans of, it was like one of those times where you're like, oh, they made this TV show for us. Like, we're the demographic they're going for here.
It was clearly a very special recipe. Dave and I have been pals for a long time, and so when I was putting together the room, I was very lucky in that Dave has a particular affinity for aspects of the '80s and the political climate. He's a big Ronald Reagan fan, and I thought how lucky I am to have one of like the biggest fans of Ronald Reagan as a friend, and I can bring him in not only to remind him I'm the showrunner, you're a co-producer,
Right.
and make sure that I put him in his place, but also to let him talk about how great the Gipper was.
A dream come true for all of us, honestly. All right, let's go back to the Scumbag. We have a few more minutes. This book, like I said, it doesn't read like anything else from if you've read a Rick Remender book. Please don't go into this book expecting a Rick Remender book, because this is something different. It looks different. It reads different. I mean, it is objectively funny. It is hilarious. There are moments that will get you. But the idea that every book is going to be a different artist, this is something new. I think it's going to be something special.
I hope you're right. Again, it was one I made for me, and I'm writing the dialogue for the third issue right now, and polishing it up to marry it to the artwork. And I'm having fun, and I need fun because my anxiety levels are pretty high.
Yeah.
I think that if people want a lark with some action and it's an adventure and illustrated by some geniuses, and they're willing to have some fun, that's hopefully what this will give.
Honestly, this is how Coliseum Forum happened. Was everybody's anxiety was a little bit high. I can't even pitch that high. And so we were like, hey, we know a lot of cool comics pros. Let's talk to those guys. And, we're 6 months in, and now I'm sitting here talking to Rick Remender about Deadly Class and the Scumbag, it's going to be a huge hit. So, Rick, I appreciate your time. You're the best, man.
It's really been a fun conversation, and I appreciate you guys helping to put the word out.
All right, guys, that's it for Coliseum Forum this week. If you sat through all 3 hours of me serenading you with some of comics apostrophe luminaries. Comics, we'll go with it. Yeah. Thank you so much. I can't even listen to my self-talk for 3 hours. I've been going crazy here. But we appreciate you. And Rick, again, thank you so much for stopping by Coliseum Forum today.
Thanks, Billy.